Sends the tweet out, says we're online, and that we're live on YouTube. I'm going to make sure we can get some folks in here for a quick midday update. Make sure they can hear me fine. All levels look good. My mobile office in my own house. Sure. Yep, I see peoples. What's up, my dudes? Yes, you are live. So we're gonna do a quick midday. I'm gonna try to make this a regular thing. It's where I'm doing at least middays with you guys to let you know what's going on. BBT Todd's in town. He got in today. He brought in the actual rig that we're going to have for the flow plate design for the actual immersion. So we'll go through that this week. I got it actually next to me here. So what you guys saw in yesterday's video is actually physically here now. And we're going to go through that and do some testing, some thermal testing with the Iridium. I think it's Iridium. I always mess up the naming of it, but we got a part of the roll here too, so we can actually go through a couple of the GPUs down here. I want to do that on a live stream. We're going to test before the heat soak that happens with the GPU prior to that, and then we'll clean off all the thermal compound, and then we'll test that live with you guys, put the GPU back together, and then do some air cooling testing with that to show you the heat transferability of that. I think that'd be kind of cool. So some good content coming up, and yeah, it should be pretty good. We got BBT Todd here through Sunday, and we're gonna do some of that testing. We're gonna get this shipped off for the flow plate, but I wanted to try to get some folks on for this midday and kind of go through what's going on with ETH Berlin. It went live very early this morning, U.S. time, I think around 3 to 4 a.m. And there was an issue found. I got the issue up right now where the OpenEthereum client stopped syncing. And for folks that aren't fully tracking on how a node / client functions within a cryptocurrency blockchain versus like the miners, is the nodes like the table of content, it is the ledger. A lot of the functions that are part of the opcodes that operate and are like from a developer standpoint, if you're not familiar with cryptocurrency and blockchain, you have the core node running a particular client. That client is compiled in some way, if it's C++, if it's Python, any of the other different clients that Ethereum has. OpenEthereum is one of them, and one of the issues today looks like part of their deployment. Obviously, there's fuzz testing. There's a lot of testing that happens on Rokusen, and this particular issue, from what I can gather, was a very unique situation where it just wasn't part of the testing. So it's kind of one of those things that you kind of test in production with a lot of these cryptocurrency blockchains. And part of the issue with that is there's not a representative sample in any of these test nets. And a lot of it has to do, and this just isn't, I mean, Ethereum obviously is having this issue. It's taken down a few different sites this morning. I believe Nanopool was one of them that had an issue. And for a little bit there, I think even the pricing right now is still down right now. But I think Nanopool from a pool side went down because it was based on OpenEthereum. And then we had an issue with what was that? There was I think Etherscan.io. I think some of these are up because they can pivot the backend to another client, which I think most of them have done so far. But I wanted to make sure that people knew where the issue was and how did it affect, quote unquote, funds are safe. This has nothing to do with this is a client syncing versus like some kind of issue with like a smart contract or anything like that. I've seen a lot of people tweeting like, hey, are they going to roll things back or not? Nothing like that. There's not. This is a client issue. It's not nothing with there was no chain split or anything like that. So I've been kind of going through the issue log here. Again, this is linked below, but it kind of gives you a punch list. This is kind of a dump of the log that occurred, and then some of the folks that started responding about 6 hours ago when it went live, and some of the issues that came up with it. Um, just I love these comments, and I get this a lot in development too. Well, it worked flawlessly on the test net. Um, but again, not having a representative example, in test, unfortunately, you have some reciprocation of stuff that can come on like this. Etherscan was using OpenEthereum, so you can see that. MetaMask transition, so Infura or Infra, um, is working. I think Etherscan's back up right now, actually. I like this one right here. You guys will get a kick out of this. Can anybody call Buterin? A lot of funny comments there. Get Vitalik on the line. That's hilarious. He's at the gym. This is actually pretty funny from a technical log standpoint, just watching through some of this fun stuff uh, of how it's going. But I think they have a notional fix right now, too. That's one thing I also wanted to communicate, from just to try to get through some of the FUD that's going to come out from this. Like, oh, Ethereum, they rushed to failure and all that. And what I think it comes down to is just, again, not having a representative sample in a test net. And I thought about this a long time ago whenever they were deploying Ethereum. And I actually had it in some of my earlier videos of like, how can you have a representative sample on a test net or really close to at least execution, where you don't have to always test in prod because of the risk with testing, new releases, especially since something like Ethereum does a lot of hard forks where you have like Bitcoin that only does soft forks, because it's hard to get everybody consensusly around to change the core code of Bitcoin. Um, you would have to have some kind of incentive structure in a place to where, the ETH R or something for like ETH Robeson, to where those tokens were openly traded, and you'd have to have some kind of incentive to create a representative sample on the network. It would have to have like an ASIC protection, or not ASIC protection, but it would have to have some kind of protection against getting double spent, because it would be a much lesser network, and since Eth hash isn't protected against a 51% attack in any way, you would have that kind of issue. But if you put value there, you would have to have something to that effect. But again, this is just one of those things that they're going to have to learn from it and make some adjustments. I've seen some new opportunities that they're looking at on testing, because obviously we have the fee burn coming up in 1559 with London, and like that's actually going to be adjusting certain factors that have to do with the fees and the burning of that. So like we want to make sure that that's absolutely right, and as a miner of Ethereum. So that's going to be a big deal. Nefarious Technology asks, is this the miners' fault, or are they going to put it on the miners? No, this has nothing to do with miners. This is a client issue. And again, the miners, from what I can see, the only effect on us is if you were mining on Nanopool, you would not have had potentially, you would have not gotten new blocks because it wouldn't have synced. But I think they pivoted pretty quick. I mean, Nanopool's up right now and they're winning blocks and stuff. But there was a period of time that we'd had essentially 20 terahash fall off the network when Nanopool stopped syncing, because effectively the node sits there at the pool level and is what's issuing out, as new blocks are awarded, and they start syncing that node, then you know that you're working on the correct proof of work. So if you're mining to Nanopool, and your nodes are down, the Nanopool's nodes were down, then you weren't getting any new work that was making it to the chain. So there was the risk there. Various Technologies wrote with a $10 super chat here. Do you think the issues occurred because the time Berlin should have been deeper tested with full attention instead of being distracted with all the attacking of the miners? No, Various Technology, I don't think, given from my understanding of the way they've tested and looking at the fuzz testing that was completed so far, this is one of those situations where none of their testing actually would have picked it up in the way it was done right now. There's been some discussion on the ETH R&D Discord I was reading this morning. because they do have a Discord channel, and start kind of talking through like, hey, how could we have caught this? There's going to be a lessons learned, kind of a retrospective that I would assume would occur. There'll probably be a Medium article that'll follow up with like how they got there, how can they prevent from this kind of thing happening again. And I believe it was a particular way, some they had some like legacy code or something in there that just whenever you how can I explain this? I'm trying to explain it in a way that can articulate it to you guys of what seems to be the issue. I don't even actually think that they have. I think they have a fix. I don't know if even they know root cause, to be honest with you. So actually, I'll pause on trying to explain that. I think I understand what was causing it, but I want to make sure that I'm not putting out misinformation out there. So we'll let um, them come out with their retrospective on it, and then we can break that down, and then I can try to articulate it better for you guys there. Brace yourself for the 51% attack or cross chain coin price waves, and it's gone. Yeah, some of these are pretty funny. I mean, anybody can comment on this, so you're going to have some people contributing to the fixes, and then some people just like come in here to point and laugh, because that's what happens right now when there's any kind of animosity between stuff. But trying to see if they have, these are 2 hours ago. 2 hours ago, it's gotten worse. Just shut it down. Hope to fix it soon. The world needs these. Yeah, there's nothing. Keep it down. Don't even try to fix it. Yeah, so you're gonna have a lot of just randos coming in here and making side peanut gallery discussions here. But I mean, it is what it is. The the testing, though, hopefully this gets some of the lead testing that's going to have to occur with 1559 now that their big thing was that they were going to get through Berlin's release. That's what this is. They're obviously having to fix and hot wash this with the Open Ethereum team, but maybe some of this testing, I don't know if it's going to slip London's schedule of any sort, if it's going to push it a month, or if they want to do some more rigorous testing with that. I mean, I'll make some comments probably in the ETH core dev meeting later today about what can, is there things that can happen on Ropeson to make sure there's a little more fidelity or randomization on some of the possibilities? Because if all these fuzz tests are just making sure that it compiles right and that you can send base transactions through, but you're not really, doing a depth of the smart contract functions and stuff on just doing regular transaction, but not smart contract transactions. Because I know part of this that looked like KuCoin had some issues with their contract because they had executed something. There's some conflicting information of what may have caused some of these nodes to stop syncing. So, I think the hot wash will be good, and then there may be some adjustment to schedules predicated on that, because there's a little more at risk when it comes to London. How long did Nanopool stop syncing for? So I saw that Nanopool was down this morning, and it looked like it had come back up after an hour. One of the questions, BBT, why isn't the miner consensus for ETH taking the decision? Well, so the way consensus works is, so the nodes actually have what the nodes have. I don't want to call it more power, but nodes are the stature of truth for the blockchain. What block are they on? What's the longest chain? Miners take the proof of work and proof the validation, right? So just because when they say if a miner is flagged for a change, what they're really meaning is the mining pool is running the latest software on the node, right? Because we get our work, we fetch the work from the node, right? And then we're doing a computational series of on like F hash is the algorithm. We're doing a mathematical proof. We're presenting said proof, and we get the rights because we presented that proof back to the node to mint that block, right? And include transactions as part of the mempool. So why mining has everything to do with regards to finding the proofs and progressing the blockchain. The actual node is the chain. So when miners are not in consensus, what that means is that they're running a node that's not going to get upgraded, or it's gonna stay on issuing out work on the old set of rules. So it gets confusing because people are like, well, miners have the power. It's like, well, miners have a node that they're not going to upgrade. And that node plus that mining power, if it reaches a certain amount of consensus to say that other miners plus their nodes are going to stay, that's the way it functions. So the mining hash power independent is doesn't it doesn't do anything. It's what work is it working on from what node is either upgraded or not. Does that make sense? I don't know if I articulated that well enough for you guys, but it all comes down to the miner and the nodes that they're running. I'm reading some of your guys' other questions here. Were you pointing out when the hash drops? Where are you pointing your hash once 1559 drops? The hash all gets determined on where the hash power goes for us is going to be determined on obviously enough to cover our power for sure, but we're already kind of separating some of the hash power. So the BBT farm was close to 40 some odd gigahash. It was at our peak, it was 55 gigahash. And that's now since, because of the 4 gig cards, we were forced to take some of those because the DAG increase went past 4 gig. Some of that went to Ravencoin, which wasn't necessarily the most profitable at the period in time, but we're more going longer hedge on Raven. But as 1559 comes down, a proportion of that hash power will come and probably be switched over to some other coins, dependent on, it comes down to also which is the most profitable. Some of that is where you can mine the most profitable coin, and then you can convert it to a coin that you're going longer on. If that coin's on some, exchange, that way you can make the exchange. There's some math that goes into that decision process, because if you're creating taxable events on every exchange, as a miner, in the US, you have to pay for your mining income as income, and then any that you hodl, you're also paying long-term capital gains if you hold it, for a long enough time. But if you're immediately switching it, you have to take that into effect if it makes sense. But yeah, that strategy, we've already split almost half the farm over to Ravencoin already. Let's see if you guys got any more questions here. And I mean, I'm gonna give a shout out. Yeah, I went to Nanopool. It still looks like they're not pulling price data for some reason right now, and it could be because they broke a lot of their back end when they were trying to get the Ether node back up. I don't even know if we can get an overview to see that they were down for a little bit here. Usually they have a stats page. Yeah, it looks like that's one day. It doesn't show that they were offline, but I think it was still taking hash rate. It just wasn't mining any blocks. Like they had a drop in blocks because their OpenEthereum node went down. So the mining power would have still been getting if they had a backup. I think their front end may have been tied to OpenEthereum, but their backend probably had some redundancy. A lot of these mining pools will have multiple client nodes where to make sure that they're succinct with the entire network. And there's like a fork watch where they'll do that. So until I'm assuming Nanopool and a few other ones will put out a tweet or something saying, "Hey, here's what affected us." But I do know that one of their nodes that they weren't showing there for a little bit. Um, yeah, and I've been trying to parse through the information that's been coming across, like the R&D dev channels and all core devs from Ethereum, just to see what's going on. Ravencoin mining is good, but it's power hungry. You can adjust your power. So our power adjustment wasn't too much more. So we do use more power per GPU, but the optimization that you can do on your GPUs to make sure, so there's a balance. There's a max amount of hash rate that you can get. Like, so if you are mining something like Ravencoin, which has Kapow, Kapow uses the full functionality of the GPU. If you're at 135 watts on Ethereum mining, let's say on your particular GPU, you could get it as close as within 10 watts and almost have the maximum amount of hash power coming out of Kapow. So, like some of our GPUs where we were at 105 watts are now 115 watts, to give you an idea. So, from a power standpoint, it wasn't that much more. On a 7 card rig, I think it's about another 150 to 200 watts. Now, if you were already running really close to your power supply's max, which a lot of farms were set up optimally to where if they had, let's say, 1,000 watt power supply and they were running like 780 watts total rig power, Kapow may drive you up to like 910, right? To optimally do it. What I've recommended to people is take a small hit on your hash rate, drop your power a little more, and get you down to more where it's more optimal around that 850 watt power. So, 850 watt draw on like 1,000 watt power supply. You won't have as much. You may drop maybe 10 on a total rig. You may drop, 8 to 10 mega hash in total. Like, let's say it's a 70 mega hash rig on something like Raven, you may drop to 60, but you'll be running a lot more efficiently. You'll run a lot cooler. Um, it's not a huge gap, to say the least. I mean, you can put a lot more power on it. Definitely, if you don't tweak it, you're going to use a lot more power because you are using the core of the GPU. So that is something to be consideration. But yeah, it doesn't have to be a lot more power hungry, is what I'm saying. Nefarious with another $10 super chat, like a boss. Nanopool has been disappointing lately when it comes to communicating. They've been asked several times, are they going to support MEV with no response? So sadly, lack of info on this is a new norm. I would never put speak on their behalf. There's a good chance that they have no idea on how to participate in it. There's a lot of mining pools that were set up that are probably smaller groups and they just don't have a MEV specialist, or they haven't allocated Ethereum. I mean, there could be all kinds of reasons why a pool wouldn't be supporting it. It could be they don't have the a person hired that understands on how to create or use an existing known bot. They could have been pursuing it since the discussion came up, and then saw several instances where um, there's been sandwich bots that have taken the stack from a pool. So like I know that recently there was a 300 Ethereum sandwich bot that took a majority of a pool's like mining or MEV activity, and they actually kind of baited them into you know their stack that they were using to create some MEV. Um, the Dark Forest is a mean place, man, and like they might be not wanting, like, less is more for them, maybe in this particular case right now, to see what their payouts are versus somebody else's payouts, what their pool luck is versus somebody else's, and then just having people do their own due diligence to figure out, like, hey, I make more on this other pool than Nanopool, and them not communicating if they're doing it or not um, isn't impacting their bottom line right now. And the way you would impact that is everybody that's on Nanopool just start to move off of it. And when they start seeing that draw down, they're going to have to respond. They're going to have to say, "Hey, yeah, we actually do MEV, and you get 90% of it, and it is what it is." But until then, if people keep mining to it, and they're not talking to you, that's a way to kind of push them. Is just mine somewhere else. I think their minimum payout's like 2 ETH too. So I mean, if you're a smaller place, it's going to be a while before you get a payout. I did see. I want to give one shout out before I leave today. Looks like Tim's sending me some messages here. I do. Here we go. Thanks for spreading the word and keeping the accuracy. So I do keep an open comm channel with Tim and Hudson on ETH And Hudson gave us a little shout out just to say thanks for spreading the word. So, bottom line, he corrected me on one because I had asked a question related to um, Eth63, Eth64, which is just some of the Eth hash. He made sure that he corrected me here, and the node's going offline. So just giving you guys full transparency there, of just trying to make sure that the messaging is out there and you guys understand what's going on in the space. I did want to give a shout out. It looks like Drew Vosk was on, let's see here, at Vosk Coin. He got on CNN for anybody that hadn't been checking that. And of course, anytime you do an interview, you don't necessarily know how they're going to use your B-roll or use your channel, use part of the interview stuff. And I would assume that, and maybe Drew can talk to this, but any interview I've ever been asked to do, I always ask what's the context and is there any kind of counterpoints that are going to be used in it. That way I'm not set up, just because I feel that there's always a setup when it comes to media and making a point. And on this, while it was a good exposure to crypto and cryptocurrency mining, it was kind of pivoted mid-interview to the major strain on energy, and then it pivoted to the discussion about how inefficient the space is when it comes to usage of power versus the amount of transactions per second. And it's like this linear, draw on, if my only measurement and my only metric is based on its transaction per second, I get that it looks like it's not a very good system, but we all know that it isn't about just the transaction per second on Bitcoin. And now you're compartmentalizing the entire cryptocurrency mining space predicated on this transaction per second. And this is the guy that talks to it. Digi-Economist founder Alex is talking about the difference between Visa transactions per second and Bitcoin transactions per second being 5. And what folks are completely missing is that that's like looking down one highway, but there's 64 highways of things that are going. There's a lot more to this cryptocurrency digital architecture that's out there when it comes to just not only the smart contracts, but the multiple networks that are going out there, the exchanges of multiple networks, the exchange of value that's in the now almost $2 trillion of exchange of value across multiple different tokens, across multiple different types of security architecture when it comes to proof of work, proof of stake, master node architectures, all of this stuff. And they marginalize the overarching issue, or the overarching benefit to the tech. And it's just it's funny. I don't know if they pre-briefed him on how they were going to use that content, but it's a lot of exposure for Drew's channel, and that's good for him. But there's with a lot of that power comes a lot of responsibility. So there's make sure, Drew, if you watch this or you see it, that you yield that with an understanding that in that public facing eye and stuff like that, you got to make sure that you're being understanding of how it can be manipulated around, and be ready to defend that if you need to. But we're all here as one group, man. Like, you're not in there alone if they come at you. Come at you, bro. I subscribe to him. Why go to CNN? The power draw argument is a non-argument. Are they grasping the straws here? No, I think that's just the basic narrative that's came out in general in this space. When you look at it's a metric. So the system in general works on metrics, right? You have a metric you can grab onto. For a long time, it was the throughput, right? And they did kind of throw throughput in there of like, how much value can you really get in 5 transactions per second if you're looking at Bitcoin's base level transaction speeds, which is a little more than 5 seconds per transaction, by the way. But the and it's a measurement that you can measure. You can measure that they're using that much power, and then where does that power come from? And now that becomes the narrative. Um, Agnostic to the fact that the amount of infrastructure that's required to run the machine in general, data centers, coop locations, which is co-locations, availability zones by cloud providers, all of this stuff that uses hugely amounts of electricity, just as much as, if not more than Bitcoin by itself. But massive data centers that operate the entire world's infrastructure in general use a ton of power too, and nobody's talking about that, right? Um, and when you start looking at the flash to bang on some of the things that you could start to co-locate on crypto, and the interface agreements and all this other architecture that you have to put in place right now because of certificate authorities, and looking at where the eventuality of this tech can provide as an augmentation, like, you're going to be able to take away a lot of process, like a almost like a lean project. And we're already seeing it on the finance side. There's so much overhead right now in banking to get a loan, to get all this stuff, and now you have like to where you can go DeFi, right? For me to borrow money, if I have equity or money, a if I had gold or I had something that backs a loan. Right now, I can sell all of that into crypto, and I could go get a DeFi loan. And it's as fast as click, click, loot. Using something like BlockFi, I can transfer that in there. Let's say I put $20,000 of back equity in there, and I need to borrow $10,000, a TVL of 50%. Well, I can go do that instantly. Get it to USDC, sell that for the dollars 1 to 1. Now I have a $10,000 loan. I'm paying myself back. It's not a taxable event, and I didn't have to fill out anything besides my initial BlockFi account. Right? There is no going into the bank and trying to explain stuff. There's none of that. Like, all that infrastructure, all that overhead, all that drama is gone. So as you start to move to a world where you can have collateralized loans like that, and you can start transitioning traditional like IRAs and finance stuff over to crypto, and the crypto is enabling you to do stuff a lot faster. If you want to go take a 401k loan, it takes a process, it takes time. DeFi loan, as an example, is instantaneous, right? It is literally like minutes, right? So when you look at how much energy is being spent on all of these other assets, all these other businesses, all this other infrastructure that's in place to facilitate the same damn thing, then you start to really see the benefit when you come to that. So the power being used by a lot of these things is the security of the network. So you have an exchange of power and some capex, your hardware, and it's facilitating that central authority and that max thing. So I think it's an evolving process that's been going on since the beginning of when Bitcoin came out, and it's going to continue. And as we're going to start to see more and more transition to crypto, deleveraging a lot of that overhead, I think it'll be a big deal. All right, take a few more questions, guys, and we're gonna wrap this up. I'm trying to keep them to about 30 minutes, midday stuff. If you guys have any questions, I can get to them. And DeFi can replace banking. ETH gas are hella lower than the Visa fees. Yeah, I mean, there are, and the fees, eventually, as we start to get into layer two, and you have this speed, repetitive ability to tap other chains too. I'm really interested in the long term of this, of not just Ethereum and some of the others, but the interoperability across chains. If I can take a position, especially if I need liquid cash at that moment of time to do something, or I can post up some collateralized leverage versus borrowing with no leverage, borrowing with no equity of any sort, that's part of the risk, is letting people borrow $200,000 without any kind of collateral besides your own butt, right? To say, uh, you can earn over time. Like, that's the transition. That's the transition we're living in now. We're going to move to a place to where people's value extraction and stuff, you can start to have on an appreciating set. and then you can borrow against that, and it makes your decision making when you're borrowing or you're doing something a little different, because you're like, you know what, I have $20,000 in crypto now saved up. I want to buy this one thing. I can borrow against what I have. I have a high confidence that that's going to go up in value. So when I'm borrowing against it, I'm taking less risk um, of going further into debt, because now it's a collateralized loan, and there's just a lot of net effects that are all positive. So as liquidity providers are providing there and taking some of that risk out, there's an ecosystem of value growth happening there, and it's extracting it's getting a lot of that value proposition from extracting all this overhead value that is in the system. And it isn't just people. Like, I've had these conversations before with folks, like the value extraction of leaning out the current system isn't just a matter of people losing their jobs. It's literally all this just minutia that's in between all the infrastructure. You have interface agreements, you have licensing contracts with different third party vendors. So the licensing models have been going away for a while. Like, a lot of companies and governments and stuff have been getting away from this like value vendor locked kind of world, where everything's been going more open source, and you're exchanging versus paying a third party company a lot of money to have a license. You're exchanging that to say, I'm going to have a developer that can write me some custom code to facilitate the things that I need, versus trying to pay a company and a license fee that's supposed to provide it to me. Because now you have more control. Again, it says transfer of control when you go to open source, because you can go and do that. When you transfer your money, which is centralized, into more open source, provided you see just the transparency of the way things work, but you also have the ability to participate in a different way. Then you don't have to rely on somebody else. So there's a lot on this subject I can get into. It has nothing really to do with mining short of the security side of it. But if this kind of stuff interests you guys, please, if you're watching this after this video, talk below and we can talk through it. It's kind of like a whiteboarding of kind of the future state. And this is part of the stuff people ask me why I'm so bullish, and this is why I'm bullish, because I'm looking past the day-to-day FUD that's out there, people not understanding it, media that's taking a portion of what they understand and regurgitating it with some other narrative that's maybe a paid narrative, because a lot of that stuff's not transparent. Um, you know, and seeing that, at the end of the day, the stronger technology stack's going to work. It's gonna win forward, because people are going to look through the bullshit, and you're going to get a better product. Michael Walker says, "Man, I don't understand money at all." I need to check out FlexPool. Chris, we need to catch up, buddy. You want to do a stream sometime? Let's do a stream. I got all kinds of questions when it comes to the pool side for you guys that I think would be a good stream. We got a pool operator in here. Samir, bullish on the entire ecosystem, buddy. Jack says, "You ever tried arm wrestling or powerlifting? You look like you come from that sport." No, man. I do a lot of my own outdoor work and stuff, but I was a middle linebacker in school in sports. I was waiting for Chris. Yeah. Have I looked into helium mining? I've seen a few of the videos out there. I may have even gotten an email from them at one point. I don't do a lot of stuff with when it comes to like ASIC types of miners, but right now it looks like the lead time on the helium miner was like June or July, sometime for like the next batch. But I was gonna look into their network and see what was going. I know it's like kind of this IoT device, and they're using a low wattage chip to do it. Thanks, Ruben, for the kind words, my dude. Well, I'll catch up with Chris after this and see if we can get a good video together from a mining pool standpoint. I'd love to talk about that. I think it would be a good conversation. So, in summary, Berlin Fork is good. ETH mining electric. Yeah, in summary, Berlin Fork looks like everything functioned with it. One of the client teams had an issue with the client, and it stopped syncing. That's essentially what's happened. And circumstantially, things that rely on that client for communications, for where the block height is. So if you're a pool, you look for the latest block height, and you get your proof of work, where you're going to be doing your proof of work from. Any pools that were reliant on that stopped syncing, and they had to switch over to other things. But yeah, everything else looks good. Awesome, my dudes. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. And thanks for joining me. Hopefully, you guys like the midday kind of live streams. We do have content coming up here. Let me see if I can get this out. I got the rig right here. Kind of I was gonna do this on the stream for you guys here. There's a lot going on here. Let's see if I can lift this rig up without too much disaster. Here we go. So here is the mining rig. I got everything all stacked up. It looks like just a big stack of wires right now, but we will be going through this possibly as early as tonight. We're going to do a full video on it, but this is the full mining rig that is going to go in the immersion. You guys can see some of the stuff there. So we got it here. This is a 12 card rig, actually. So I'm holding up essentially 12 cards. They're double stacked in there. A whole mining rig. So 12 card mining rig. Quick little bench press. And all the other stuff associated to it. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure you follow, subscribe, and we'll be doing a test with that because we're going to test a whole bunch of different algorithms with it. We're doing a cool test with that with Delta fans on it, just air cooled, and then that is getting shipped off. Actually, as early as tomorrow, it's getting shipped off, and we're going the company helping us with the immersion tanks. So we have the tanks, but we're getting flow plates that are going to go in place so we can slide those rigs down into a flow plate and then connect them and make sure that they're stable in there. So they got to measure all the proper aluminum to get the flow plates correct, and then that way we know where all the the flow of the liquid as the pumps are going, it can go through the fin correctly and all that. So he goes, "What the hell? 12 cards in that small of a package?" You guys will see. It is highly densely compact. So essentially, each card's like back to back almost perfectly. And those are the RX 478 gigs. But we have the 478 gigs first because we have a lot of the 470s and 480 Sapphire Mining Edition. All the fans and the structures are pulled apart. So like all the I guess you would call it kind of the shrouds that were on them that hold the fans were all pulled apart. Backplates are all pulled apart, and they're all kind of stacked together in such a way. And I'll show you the detail of that. So subscribe for that content if you guys want to look at it. And we'll get to that. Yeah, coolant's pretty expensive. All right, my dudes. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.